Hi, I'm Ouiza and welcome back to OuiSims, an online community where I help you explore simulation games like the Sims series in a fun, interactive, educational kind of way. If you're new here, please consider subscribing if you think you'd like to see more videos just like this one, and if you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. As a disclaimer, I am aware that Plumbella has a video with this exact title, and I want to let you know I have not copied her. In fact, after I proposed my friendship to her for like the third time, she actually hearted my comment on that exact video where I say I'll have a video out soon with content very similar to hers, but also different. Same but different. We're best friends now. No kidding. It's been an idea that I've been working with since I've gotten back into playing The Sims 4, and some of the notes that I've been taking along the way that I think may be of value in creating some constructive feedback for The Sims 4. So my goal for this video is for it to be a constructive and positive video. It can be very easy to just complain about things without really offering solutions, and that's what I'm trying to get across with this video, is that I do think that there are some things that could still be implemented in The Sims 4 that could possibly redeem it and bring players like myself back who have been part of the franchise for nearly as many years as it's existed. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll probably already expect that this is going to be a fairly analytical as well as systematic kind of videos, because I like to make little groups of things. With that said, I've divided the content of this video into 3 sections: game mechanics, the Sims themselves, and the worlds. Other Sims YouTubers have already discussed the focus on aesthetic over gameplay, as well as quality of builds and like objects that get released with the game. I'm not going to be going into that too much. I think it's been really well discussed by people like James Turner / The Sim Supply / Flubberleaky, which is what I knew him as growing up. I say growing up, but we're basically the same age, but anyway, yes. You get the point. And this is more of a projection for what I hope The Sims 4 could offer, seeing as it's still planning to be around for a good few more years. So the first up of these themes is game mechanics. And I define game mechanics as essentially how we play the game and not necessarily what we do, which is what I think gameplay is. And these are definitions I've really made up for myself. I'm not sure if they're official. I'm not even sure if they exist, or if they do, it's probably a really formal thing that exists about what is a game mechanic and what is gameplay. So yeah, these are just my own things for the sake of discerning what I feel is missing and what I feel the game already has an abundance of. So there is a ton to do in The Sims 4. There are careers, active careers, a myriad of skills to learn. Like you can do a lot with your Sims, and that means that there is a lot of gameplay available for your Sims. However, I don't believe that this is the same as having game mechanics. This does not necessarily impact how you play your game. I think I've also created some new definitions, because we're just creating all kinds of definitions today, of what a stuff game and expansion pack should be, as well as like reclassifying some of the stuff game and expansion packs that we have already. So stuff packs add gameplay. They add objects, they add careers, they add new things to the game. And I never thought I would say this, but Moschino is an example of what a good stuff pack is, because it introduces gameplay, not a game mechanic. Nothing fundamentally changes when your Sim becomes a fashion photographer, but it adds a feature that if you want to engage in, you can, and you can play that route. But if you don't, you also just get to benefit by getting some cool industrial looking furniture. But by the same definition, things like Strangerville are demoted from game pack and moved into the stuff pack category, because all it does is add gameplay. Nothing changes outside of Strangerville. Your Sims continue with their lives, and once you've played that storyline, you've played that gameplay, the gameplay is done. But if there's a mechanic that is ongoing in the background, that is constantly changing and spinning how your day goes, that would be different. My definition of a game pack, in contrast, is one where a single game mechanic that is very well developed is introduced, that changes how all of your Sims interact with or engage in or experience certain phenomena in the game. And this is just what Parenthood does so well, and like that's why I have some hope and why I'm making this video, is because if it does ever get to the ears of EA of some sort, then I want them to know, like, I believe that they can do it. If they've shown that kind of depth with Parenthood, and it's beyond just like setting a curfew, like it actually has implications for your Sims and their futures and whatever, surely they can do that again. And that, I think, is a game pack. I think that is the definition of a game pack. Things like Jungle Adventure, Granite Falls, these are gameplay features. You play in a new world, you play in a new campsite, and you play an adventure. Once your gameplay is done, the pack is done, well done, you are now left with objects to play with, and in my opinion that is a stuff pack. If Laundry Day stuff was invested in even a little bit more, I already think it qualifies to be a game pack just based on the fact that it changes how your Sims live. But if, for example, it was a thing that you'd have to opt out of instead of opt in on, then I think that it would qualify more as a game pack. And then we get to expansion packs. And with expansion packs, my expectations are much higher than adding a gameplay thing, as I would expect in a stuff pack, or adding a single well-designed game mechanic, as I expect in a game pack. In an expansion pack, I expect an entirely new dimension to the Sims for every Sim in your game to experience. One where even if your Sim is not engaged in the primary feature or one of the highlights of that pack, they are still impacted by it. Seasons is probably one of the easiest ways and also one of the better executed ways that The Sims 4 has done this. And that is because even if you don't garden or flower arrange or things like that, the weather still impacts your Sim's day-to-day life. I have a Sim who is a programmer who's also broke, and she wanted to go for a hackathon in San Myshuno, and literally in the middle of the hackathon a thunderstorm started and basically wiped out all of the computers that were there. Now, is that an oversight? I don't know, much like many things with EA, is it a bug or is it a feature? But at the end of it, the weather was influencing how her day went, and that is the kind of stuff that I think is what makes the gameplay richer. An example of a pack that attempted to introduce a game mechanic but it just didn't work out so well was Get Together with the club system. And clubs sound like a good idea in theory because it's a new way that you can play with your Sims. It influences how you play with your Sims. It's not necessarily a new object or new action. It's more a new context in which to put your Sims into. But the issue with clubs is that if you never start or join one, they may as well not be there. And aside from the annoying phone calls you get from Sims to join their clubs, it's not much more than just that, and that is just a thing that you do for the sake of doing it because it's new and fancy, and not necessarily because it adds value to your Sim's day-to-day life. I see a successful game mechanic as something that influences your Sims both involved in that activity directly as well as inadvertently affecting those who are not directly involved. And spammy phone calls and messages don't count as affecting inadvertently. To illustrate an example of this is cats and dogs. Cats and dogs did it really well. Even if your family didn't own a pet, you're reminded of pets because there will be a stray animal at some or other point reminding you that you actually have to deal with this other level of life, living with animals, even if your Sim decided not to adopt animals. And I think that that's the kind of mentality that I would personally approach features or game mechanics in future about deciding when is something valuable and when is it not. I just think it's very lacking in most of these expansion packs. And by the definitions I've already set, like many of these expansion packs would actually be classed as game packs or like stuff packs, just really big stuff packs. And at this point, The Sims 4 Discovering University is a really high risk pack. I mean, it's still a rumor at this point, it hasn't been announced yet. Because if all it does, and this is my fear because I think that it did this as well in The Sims 3 University Life, if all it does is add a new place, a new world or university or new couple universities for your young adult Sims to go to and spend a few weeks there and go to class and party and come back with a degree, then it's a game pack. Like, it alters the way that young adults live, but then what more is there really for your other Sims? However, for this, I think, to become an expansion pack, it would have to alter things like how teenagers approach high school. And The Sims 2 had this system of scholarships, and you could get scholarships for many things, being an athlete, things like that. But it changed the way your teenagers could approach school. And that's extending into another way that we play with our Sims, which for me is a game mechanic change. And just to play into this idea more about how it changes like the rest of the world if you're not a Sim going to university, is it should offer something different for those Sims who have gone to university, and not just like a skill boost or a job boost, but like actual like different professions and careers that those Sims become eligible for. Another idea I had was if elder Sims could have like alumni reunions and things like that, and go back to meet with their class that they had at university, and just like keeps this as like a full circle thing and not just a single gameplay function that you play through for a little bit of time, and once it's done, your Sim's gone to university, it's finished now. The next category we're moving on to are the Sims themselves. In The Sims 4, Sims are quite homogeneous. There's not much like discerning one sim from the other aside from how they look and a combination of traits that they have. And I think that one way that we could change this would be to do an overhaul of how traits are used in the game. At the moment, I think that traits are very heavily based on the game mechanic that was so heavily marketed at the start, and that was with emotions. And just that your Sims could now be angry and be sad and be whatever based on whichever things that they were exposed to. But all your traits do is give you a different propensity to experiencing different emotions. They don't actually do anything or discern like how your sim interacts with the world. And that's why I don't believe that adding more traits or downloading traits or whatever is actually going to change the problem, which is that traits do nothing for your sims except give them slightly different buffs, and it's not very holistic in what those traits mean for your sims. For example, if you make a gloomy sim, and I'm aware that there are different categories of traits, but if you were to make a gloomy sim, all you've really done is give them a mood disorder. Like on a serious level, all they're really going to have is a greater propensity to wake up sad. And that doesn't really extend to life beyond when they're sad. Like, it doesn't change how they interact with their relationships, it doesn't change how they interact with the world around them, how they view their job. Like, the Sims 4 Sims don't have views. Like, if you have a self-assured Sim, all it means is that they're going to wake up feeling confident more often than not. But you can get that same buff from making a really good meal or brushing your teeth. Like, these are not special things that come with having specific traits or not. I remember being distinctly, like, really disappointed by the jealousy trait, because all it really did was make your sim jealous of their significant others, like interactions with other sims. It didn't actually extend beyond that. Like, your sim didn't become jealous if someone else had a higher quality stove than they had, or they lived in a bigger house than them. The jealousy is limited to this very specific thing. If your sim doesn't have a significant other, then what's the point of having the jealousy trait? Like, there's no actual reason to. Aside from the fact that you could have very different kinds of traits in The Sims 3, before you left Create a Sim, they also left with a favorite food, a favorite color, and a favorite genre of music, which sounds so simple, but literally, if you gave your sim like their favorite meal, if they love pancakes, it would be such a positive mood for them for the rest of the day. Like, it was these significant, special little moments for each of your sims that made the game different. And not necessarily because you subjected them to a certain set of interactions that caused them to have a mood, and therefore, tada, they are playful, flirty, sad, inspired, whatever. In The Sims 2, they introduced the attraction system. I believe it came with The Sims 2 Nightlife. And here your sims could have turn-ons and turn-offs, and it was up to you in Create a Sim. You could have sims who would prefer brunettes, or prefer glasses, or be turned off by cologne, or be turned off by thin sims, or be turned off by zombies. Like, it was really fun, like quirky stuff that you could be turned on or turned off by, and that influenced who your sim would be attracted to outside of like Create a Sim. And that's really cool, because I mean, then not every sim you see on the side of the road is a candidate for the 100 baby challenge. Like, because your sim, there's a level of challenge of actually wanting to get someone your sim likes, or like making them marry someone, if this is your story, that they really don't like and has everything that they don't like. The next issue that I think should be worked on is the Sims' day-to-day interactions and what you decide to do with your Sims on a day-to-day basis. Now, in The Sims 4, whims have become optional, and they are actually off by default, and you need to turn them on in the settings panel if you would like to actually engage with them, which I think is just such a clear reflection of the priorities of The Sims 4 at that point, or at this point. Because even though the whim system in The Sims 4 was very lackluster in the first place, it was the only thing to indicate what your sim, what your individual unique sim with agency and whatever wanted to do with their day and with their time. And when you switch that off, there's no way you're going to get the satisfaction or the happiness points or whatever they're called. And your sim's not going to be fulfilled, and it's not possible when they're not even allowed to have these wants. I really think that the Sims 2's wants and fears system is like the gold standard of what Sims' agency and like will should look like. Just the fact that your sim could be afraid of something happening was really profound. Some Sims would be petrified of having someone break into their house, because the Sims 2, 3, 1, all of them had robbers and things like that. And other Sims would be petrified of their spouse leaving them or dying, or like even becoming a zombie. Like, these were very big things that your Sims would be concerned about. And there would be other things that they would want, like some Sims, if they were pleasure-seeking or romantics and things like that, they would want to have an affair, they would want to break up a marriage or things like that. These were really big things that altered the way you played the game, because at the end of it you wanted your Sims to be happy, and whatever that meant is up to your Sims' personality, up to their preferences, up to everything that makes them unique. The Sims 3 had a similar system, but it didn't have fears. And although it wasn't like perfect, and I do think that the Sims 2's system was near perfect, if not perfect, but that might also be retrospective lenses I'm viewing the Sims 2 on, but it was still better than the Sims 4's whim of wanting to buy a new musical instrument, which I think is a little bit less specific to your Sim. Even though the whims don't play such a big part of the Sims 4's day-to-day, I think if they were to play a big part, it would really change the focus on the game mechanics around playing with your Sims. And we're coming back to game mechanics again. Something I think that The Sims 4 has started doing in little ways, but I really think they could capitalize on, is to have consequences for your Sims actions. And that's obviously not like the way that they word it, but for celebrity quirks and for spellcaster curses and things like that. Like, these are consequences of your Sims actions. And I think that that's a really interesting way for your Sims, like as they navigate their lives, to have some repercussions for those. And the reputation system, I think, tries to do that. I will personally admit, like, it's never been like a huge factor in my game on whether a Sim has been dishonest or like fired from something, whatever. Like, it's never actually had a weight in my game. But I think if they were to emphasize just this day-to-day thing of everyday Sims becoming less or more like self-absorbed, or what's it, like juice dependent or something, like based on like how they live their lives. And the final thing about Sims that I really like hope that they bring to the fore more in The Sims 4, the 4 in The Sims 4, is the memory system. It exists in The Sims 4, but it's more opt-in. Like, you physically create memories yourself and you assign emotions to them, and when your Sim views them, they will become this and that. It exists, but it's not the same way that The Sims 2 was. And The Sims 2's memory system was, just as an example, understanding why there's a very rebellious Sim, they have a parent that passed away, you'll see just before their birthday, or they would have had multiple failed marriages in their memories, or they would have won fights, or have been like left at the altar. Really big life moments that show that your Sim has lived a life up until that point, and that they have a rich life that has meant something, and you're not the only one as the player trying to remember, like, oh, this should mean something to you, let me make a memory out of it. You could empathize with your Sims in The Sims 2 because you could see their whole life story, you could understand how they became the way that they did, and you could build really rich backstories and dialogues around like how a Sim became the way that they are. It was such a detailed game mechanic that impacted all of your Sims' lives. It would be really great to reintroduce. And finally, I'm going to be discussing worlds. There's not too much I want to say here because I do believe that Plumbella did go into really good detail in her video about it. I think that smaller worlds should mean open worlds, and if you're not going to get small worlds that are open, then at least give us big worlds that we can build in, and with more places that have diverse sizes of lots. And there you have it. These are all the things that I think The Sims 4 could majorly benefit from if they were to consider implementing it, not just like in the immediate future, but also for the rest of The Sims 4's lifespan, as well as for The Sims 5. Today's question of the day is, which game mechanic from the previous Sims games would you like to see reintroduced into The Sims 4? Let me know in the comments down below. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will see you in the next one. Sul.